Welcome to the Fast Host Proactive Podcast, Spill the IT. Each episode, we'll sit down with some of the amazing Proactive team and chat through their experiences of the ups and downs of IT infrastructure management in small businesses. There's always plenty to chat about.
Good morning, everybody, and we're back here at the Fast Host Proactive Data Centre this morning. With me this morning, I have Simon Yeoman, who is the CEO of Fast Host Proactive. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's good to interview you again. I think it's been a few months, hasn't it?
It has, but I'm really pleased to be back.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So I've named this podcast this morning, rightfully or wrongfully, and I've named it "The World's Getting Big in the Window," and it was a phrase I heard on the film Apollo 13. And for me, and obviously I know for you, Simon, it's something you're really passionate about. It's about the environmental aspect of your data center here and the strive that you're doing around environmental policy and the drive behind that. But before we sort of just talk about that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the data center here and what you're particularly proud of it?
Yeah, of course. So we've touched on it previously, and we're sort of sat in our new building. It's sort of I still like to call it a new building, and we made the decision several years ago to invest very heavily in our new data center infrastructure. It cost us £21 million. So it's but from my point of view, it's a worthwhile investment. It's very unique. You know, we just touched on sort of environmental topics are very important to me personally, but important to us as an organisation. And what we have in this building is the perfect mix of environmental. We're sort of very conscious of the build, sort of the materials and how sustainable the carbon footprint of the materials involved, the operationalization, how energy efficient it is, and but also as we've touched on previously, we have a solar panel farm on the roof of this building, which is enough to generate sort of half the operating power for on a good day, on a good sunny day.
You get a few of those, don't
you? Yeah. It's very nice.
Yeah.
But we've got that blend of the energy efficiency, the security, and the reliability, and that makes it sort of Tier 4 status. Still, the only sort of Tier 4 designed and operated data center certified by the Uptime Institute in the UK. So we're really proud of that. And the energy efficient is something that we're particularly proud of.
Which is a huge, I would imagine, obviously, it's a huge tick box. We've been talking this morning, we've been doing some sort of interviews with some of your customers, and they've been talking today about when they're going for the larger contracts, and they've got to tick those sustainability boxes, you know, in relation to IT efficiencies and their carbon impact and things like that. So it's a massive thing. What's as a CEO, what's your responsibility on that? Is that part of your are you responsible for a certain aspect of that within the business to make sure you maintain that, or even, dare I say it, if it's possible, can you improve it?
So there's a few aspects here that we, likewise, I caught up with our customers today in between sort of shoots and was really pleased to sort of show them around the data center and show it off. And I think they were sort of very, very taken back by the operation and the magnitude and the sort of the technology that we've put in place here. So that it was really, really pleasing to me for us to be able to show it off. So I was really proud of that. So with regard to environmental and sort of ESG topics, we work, and we have a sort of representative or an owner of ESG topics, and we have a sort of head of environmental social topics, and we work within a group that is sort of listed, and we have to make sort of regular sort of statements and certifications in that area. So they're the overall owner, but really it's a topic that everybody needs to contribute to, and I think that role holder is more the coordinator and facilitator, but we all as individuals and me as the CEO of Fast Host need to own that topic we do look at every aspect. We're sat in the data center, and let's be candid and honest about it. Data centers do consume a lot of energy, and so it's something that we're very, very conscious of, and we put a lot of effort into our data center operations, and rightly so. That's where a lot of the quick wins and the lower hanging fruit. But we do look at every aspect of our operation, and that's where that sort of ownership is spread and delegated. It might come through to the way that we manage our offices as well, and the way that we manage our waste in our offices. And there's a sort of role for our facilities people, but also our HR team have worked very hard on sort of opening up things like EV schemes for all of our employees. Yeah. We do look at every aspect. We look at sort of hybrid working and travel to work policies and things like that. And we do look at every aspect of our operation. And that's because everybody needs to be conscious of it, and we all individually need to look at the areas in our business that help us become more environmentally conscious and more sustainable. Running a business is very different to what it was 50 years ago, when we had sort of a lot of responsibility primarily to shareholders. They were the number one stakeholder, and then over time we evolved to be more conscious of customers and employees, and there was a time there where people looked at shareholders, customers and employees, but actually managing a business in 2024, it's much wider. We have a responsibility to wider social responsibilities, and that might be environmental, as we're talking here, but it's just your social impact and being part of the local community, but also the wider social responsibility that you have on a global basis. And running a business, I need to make sure that Fastos is working in that way, and they're not just thinking about shareholders, customers, very important, as are our people, but also our role in the wider society.
Yeah, that sort of holistic approach. Yeah. How much are you being pushed by customers? So, i.e. people that are coming to you to say, look, we want to improve our environmental efficiency. How can we work in partnership with Fastos Proactive to achieve that? Are they pushing the boundaries in relation for what they're asking for? Because they have to be seen. They're equally, you talk about moving away from this more capitalist, I think, sort of perspective in making sure that you're holding yourself responsible for every aspect of your business. Your customers are being asked to present and do the same things as well. So how much are they sort of pulling you into that and saying, what can we do better? Or dare I say, how you're reporting to them what that is? Lots of questions there.
Yeah, it's very much a push. We, like I've said, we're very proud of our credentials in this area. We're very proud of our data centre, and very proud to show it off. And so we're very keen to push that message and sort of push that message to our customers and potential customers. Also, increasingly, our customers are asking us the right questions that we are ready and want to answer. And as sort of guidance on social responsibilities and environmental responsibilities gets firmed up, I think it will be a question that's asked of us on more and more. At the moment, we have sort of responsibilities on an annual basis to sort of provide statements to how we are managing these types of topics. But increasingly, I foresee, and when I look at our business and the way that we manage our procurement processes and our supply chain, increasingly we are looking at these topics, because the first thought is to look at what's in your control and how you manage the environmental impacts and the social impacts. But the next stage is to look at your supply chain and put responsibilities onto your supply chain. And likewise, our customers are starting to ask those questions of us as well.
Yeah, we were talking earlier with one of your customers today who very much specialises in putting tech in to support supply chain. Yeah. And obviously, as we know, it's all coming right from the top all the way down. Let's talk about AI. We've been really good on the podcast sessions recently, actually, because everybody's talking about it. It doesn't matter where you go, everybody's talking about AI. Obviously, everybody's starting to look at that in relation to processing power and energy. And AI is starting to drive a lot of that consumption of energy right now. Just talk to me a little bit about how that's impacted your business, how it's impacted the data centre. Let's just say over the last 18 months even, because there's been a massive explosion with it.
Yep. So there's a couple areas here that just we are very keen to measure and report on our sort of carbon footprint, and we're working on ways to do that this year, and that's part of our sort of wider group of companies that will start to sort of measure and report on our sort of wider carbon footprint on a sort of annual basis.
Sure.
As we work towards sort of commitments over the next 6 years. But one of the areas where it's very difficult to understand the impact is sometimes in the way that we might code. Even before we get into AI, how are our servers performing, and how are they managing load, and how are they managing our IT? And so we want our code to manage our hardware as efficiently as possible. But it's sometimes very difficult at this moment to understand how to tweak that and what impact that has. So even before we get into the realms of AI, understanding the difference that improvements in the way that we manage our software and therefore we manage our hardware, and the difference that can make on a carbon footprint, we've got work to do in that space. Moving on to sort of next level of AI and how sort of the processing power required by AI, it's at the moment, I don't mind being very candid, it's very difficult. The speed of change in AI, we cannot report against it at the moment because it's changing and developing that quickly. I think we are very conscious of it, and therefore the way we would like to manage it is just get better at managing the impact on our processors and the impact the processing compute has on the environment, and sort of trying to manage it in that way.
Because I guess sort of traditional models before the explosion of AI, when you were looking at peaks and troughs throughout the year, not saying you could accurately, Black Friday, for instance, we all know that Black Friday is coming. You would understand that there would be an operational peak for some of the customers that you support in relation to that of consumption, of usage of the service. I guess what you're saying is, your predictability model must be a complete nightmare.
Yeah, and for a long time we've been managing the efficiency and the power consumption in our data centers and the efficiency of those data centers. But there's all sorts of factors that can drive that. The automatic assumption is, it's the cooling and the processing of those servers, and if they're sort of web serving servers, what's impacting the load. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand the load. Is it external factors like Black Friday or some sort of event taking place on the internet? Is it sort of demand, or is it the way that we've programmed our platforms, or is it the way that our customers have configured things like websites or software? There sort of could be some bad, inefficient code in there that's forcing a lot of processing power. And it's very difficult sometimes for us to sort of understand the drivers in that area. And so we're keen to get to that next level of detail.
This is a random question, and I've not scripted this, but do you think with the added demand of AI, there's going to be maybe an incentive for you to push your clients and say, look, we understand you've got to run AI, but if you run it between 2 and 4 in the morning, that cost of consumption and energy is going to be a lot lower if we are running the AI scripts during the day. Is that going to be a consideration, or am I completely off-piste on that one?
No, I think it's a consideration. I think first of all we need to understand the pros and cons of running AI. If we are able to sort of put a task into AI that means that we don't need to have somebody jumping in a car and going to this office to make these changes, that it's a net gain. But I think first and foremost is to try and sort of measure the impact of AI.
Yeah.
And then you can start to make those tough decisions. Or, is there a good time to do it, or is there a bad
Well, it's sort of, I guess, to use the term that you use here, proactive, it's about to make those proactive sort of reporting. And I mean, that's something else I want to talk about in relation to how you're reporting on your data center, all the assets you have, and reporting back to your customers, and proactively, I guess, saying, look, this is what you consumed from us in the last quarter, but actually making these tweaks and things, your energy consumption, we can bring it down by this, and its impact is less than this, and things. I mean, are you going to be getting? It's strange, isn't it? Are you going to be getting into that sort of granularity and those types of conversations with some of your customers?
We would like to, in the future, at the moment, we look at the energy efficiency of a data center.
Yeah.
And as we put equipment and hardware into that data center, we will, which is the most energy efficient processor on the market, which is the most energy efficient fan on the market. So in our procurement process, we'll make conscious decisions around choosing the right hardware. When it comes to measuring at a per unit basis, that at the moment is very difficult for us, and we need to move in that direction in I was about to say the coming years, hopefully sooner than that.
So what do you think the priorities are of business? Because we've spoken about that. You were talking about delivering value to shareholders, and we're talking about how it's changing. So when they're coming to talk to you, is it about the functionality of the servers and the operational efficiency, not efficiency, the operation of those and cost of those, or is the environmental impact leading it? Where are the priorities, Simon?
So the priorities for me in our business.
What's leading it? What are the customers demanding? Not necessarily what you're doing here, but what's that checkboxed criteria?
So I think that they are asking us about our energy efficiency, and we have focused on the areas we can control. That's where we feel that we can make a meaningful difference on our environmental impacts. And this data center is a lot more efficient than the data center that we've been in for the last 22 or 23 years. And we're very proud of that, and that's what we've been able to focus on. And we've been able to make a meaningful difference on our environmental impact by making that transition. So we have focused on the areas in our control, and that's been our priority, and that's what our customers have demanded of us. As we understand the complex nature of the technologies that we deploy, our next priority is probably to look into our supply chain and our procurement processes a bit and sort of understand what's the most efficient hardware, what's the most efficient software to be using, and that's probably our one of our future priorities.
So are you still finding that customers are overcompensating? So they're putting too much infrastructure or demanding too much infrastructure or putting too much into your data centers and saying, well, that's just in case, or we think that's what the demand's going to be. How are you seeing that in general?
No, in general, I see a transition from, if I look at our business 10, 15 years ago, we sold a lot of physical servers that had a certain amount of capacity and it worked to that capacity. Without doubt, we've all seen it over the last 10 years, there's been a transition to more virtual servers and more cloud servers. And that means that you sort of pay and consume what you need to. And that ultimately means that there's less being invested in drives, that there's more shared infrastructure in that type of environment, which is good on the wider Earth environment.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess there's a lot of focus in the world of IT around smart buildings and things like that. What's the one thing, Simon, you're particularly proud about in this day? I mean, obviously, it's a key passion for you. Yep. You can see it is, and we've had previous conversation on it. What's the one thing you're really proud of here? So
I'm really proud in this particular facility around the carbon footprint, and we did go the extra mile. Not only it's 100% renewable energy, but we thought about the design to make sure that we were consuming less energy. So not only are we using the right type of energy, we're using a lot less as a result of that. And then we went the extra mile compared to many data center providers and started to think about the backup and using sort of biodiverse power, backup power and things like that. And that's why we're particularly proud that we managed to sort of reduce our carbon footprint on things like old fossil fuels in our sort of generators, and we've managed to reduce our carbon footprint in that area by over 90%.
Well, I'm sure, is it Worcestershire County Council that you come under here?
Yes.
I'm sure you're a big sort of flag carrier for and they would promote that accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has that been a big part of sort of the regeneration of this area, making sure that it's regenerated in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, we worked hand in hand on the sort of plan, and would like to take that further. And it might not happen in Worcester, but in our sort of data center development over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, we would love to be able to work with the local community and sort of data centers generate a certain amount of heat, and it would be really good for us to redistribute that to the local community and find uses for it in our local community.
Interesting.
And ultimately, that's the way that we would like to go.
Yeah, interesting. Well, one of my final questions here, and I wrote here, what happens next? So when will this be full up? Will it ever be full up?
I'm sure one day it will be full, but a lot of the answer to that is sort of dependent on technology. What happens over the next 5 to 10 years? For Fastos Proactive, what's next? We will look at our office facilities. Our data center strategy gives us more flexibility, and the sort of environmental credentials are very high on that list of choosing our sort of next location and making sure that we are sort of good transport links. So we cut down on our employee footprint as well, but also we utilize the right type of office facility that's right for the next 50 years. I think what's next for the data center, we already have 2 halls in this data center populated. The sort of unique modular design lets us expand out into Hall 3 and Hall 4 relatively easily. I envisage that we will commence the sort of expansion of Hall 3, which will increase our capacity by another 50% before the end of this year.
Okay.
And then we do have the capacity to expand beyond Hall 4 and construct a 5th hall, which my rough maths off the top of my head means that we could probably expand by 200% from where we are today.
Right.
So we're okay for the next 10 or 20 years. But when I say okay, it's difficult to envisage everything that's going to come from a technology standpoint over that period.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Simon, I really always enjoy our interviews and our chats, and thank you for coming along today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you back here at Fastos Proactive for another session of Spill the IT. Thanks again.